On 1st of November 2025, Chief Minister Mr. P. Vijayan has declared Kerala to be free from extreme poverty, which means he says that Kerala has eradicated extreme poverty to a great extent, making it India's first state to achieve this remarkable milestone.
Kerala is all set to be declared as the first state in the country to eradicate extreme poverty.
Now, this particular achievement, it follows a targeted 4-year effort under the Extreme Poverty Eradication Program of the Kerala government in order to ensure removal of extreme poverty by the year 2025. And this, remarkably, they have been able to do. And by 1st of November, the Chief Minister of Kerala has highlighted that Kerala is now extreme poverty free. Now, if we see it from a macro lens, this is a very significant moment in history. And this is a very significant development in India's poverty alleviation journey as well. And definitely it will offer a lot of insights with it localized, with data driven, and with participatory governance models, and with aligning of UN SDG 1. We can learn from this model and replicate it in the other parts of the country based on the localized conditions. What we can do is we can learn from this model and replicate it in the other parts of the country based on the localized conditions, and we can help definitely in reduction of the overall poverty in the country. So on the basis of this, today we'll be trying to understand about the issue of poverty in India and what can we actually learn from Kerala and how Kerala has been able to achieve this remarkable feat. All these things we'll be trying to understand in today's session. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh and you're watching Perspective. Now, before we start with the discussion of poverty in India and then the Kerala model, let us come to the topic of poverty and let us try to understand in a very simple way what does the term poverty means. Now, poverty in simple terms means a deprivation or a lack of something. When a person is deprived of the basic necessities, a person is not able to have food, clothing, shelter and other basic necessities which are required for a healthy, sustainable living, that person is called to be a poor person. Now, there are several approaches towards what can poverty manifest into, or which person can be called as a poor person, or what can be poverty. See, poverty can manifest itself either in economic dimension, or in social dimension, or in political dimension, but that is usually a traditional view. Even Professor Amartya Sen, a Nobel laureate, has highlighted poverty as non-presence or absence of certain rights which are available. That is Amartya Sen's capability approach on poverty. Now let us shift to the modern term. Now, in modern terms, there is one institution known as World Bank. Now, World Bank tries to estimate poverty by keeping a numerical value of earning in front. So, which is why, as per World Bank's definition, as of June 2025, it says that anyone who is living less than $3 per day is considered to be in extreme poverty. Anyone who's living less than $3 a day is a person who's under extreme poverty. But earlier, this number was $2.15 per day. But now the limit has increased to $3 per day. Now there are poverty lines given for lower middle income countries and upper middle income countries as well. For example, for lower middle income countries, World Bank says $4.2 per day. For middle income countries, upper middle income countries, World Bank says $8.3 per day. Now, which means that anyone who's earning below $4.2 per day and earning more than $3 per day, in between that, $4.2 to $3, a person is poor and not extremely poor. But extreme poverty arises when a person is not even able to earn $3 a day. That is when you call that person extremely poor and extreme poverty to exist. Now, this extreme poverty, for to say it is very simple, but it actually captures the most deprived segment of the class, most deprived segment of the society in terms of even assessing basic human needs or basic human requirements like food, clothing, health, shelter, internet, all those things. Now, there are two other types of prominent poverties as well. One is absolute poverty and second is a relative poverty. Now, absolute poverty means a person is absolutely poor, not having any money, not having access to resources, not having access to basic amenities as well. That is a person who's absolutely poor, which means a person is not having money whatsoever and not able to maintain a good standard of living. That is a poor person. Relative poverty means that you are poor in comparison to some other. Now, if we see the world all around, everyone is relatively poor in comparison to someone, except the world's richest person. They might also consider himself or herself poor in comparison to some other big entities, some other big firms. So basically, relative poverty is comparative poverty. When you compare one individual with another, But technically speaking, what comparison is made in relative poverty? In technical sense, your income or whatever you generate is compared with the per capita income of the country, which means a person could be in relative poverty if the person is earning lesser than the per capita income of that region or per capita income of that state or country. That is what you call as relative poverty. Now, relative poverty is usually seen by the developed nations because they have already kind of eradicated absolute poverty. But absolute poverty is usually seen by developing nations because they haven't. First task for them is to remove absolute poverty. Then once they do that, then they'll be focusing on the relative poverty part. That okay, your shirt is not branded enough than that shirt, but you are having a shirt still. What about those who are not even if able to afford shirts, right? So first the government will focus on them. Now you might ask a question that what is India's position in relation to the global poverty and extreme poverty? See, India is at a very good position because extreme poverty in India has declined from 16.2% in the year 2011-2012 to around 2.3% in 2022-2023. So in a matter of a decade, from 16.2%, extreme poverty has declined to 2.3%. That is something outstanding. That is something remarkable. Plus, in this era, we have been able to uplift around 171 million people out of extreme poverty or out of poverty, which again in itself is a remarkable data, remarkable feat. But the real question is that, okay, this is the status, but what is the reason for improvement? What has led to improvement in this poverty numbers? And the answer is simple. First is rising employment levels, and second is urbanization in India. So because of rapid urbanization, because of rising formal sectors and informal sectors also, in corporate societies, and because of that, rising employment is creating a lot of jobs. Because of that creation of a lot of jobs, money is being generated, and eventually you see it getting manifested in this form. Now, even though our country has improved, still there are several lacunas, still there are several challenges which definitely persists. One is youth unemployment. Now, the reason for that is structural, not the problem with the youth, but the problem with the structure which we have created. Our educational structures are not teaching the students how to learn, how to work, and how to apply things. They are just teaching them rote learning. That you learn these things, you pass the examination, and then you move away. Right? That is how our education system is trained today. So youth unemployment is a problem, definitely. Second is gender disparity in this regard. That is also a problem. In social way, we can see informality, that is 90% of the sector being informal and 90% of the people working in informal sector. So informal sector dominance being very, very high is also a cause of concern, and which is why several critics argue that the numbers which we see highlighting that the extreme poverty numbers have come down and India has improved a lot, they are not fully capturing the multidimensional deprivations which people in India are facing. This is what many critics have to argue, and which is why coming to this discussion, that what do you think, poverty in itself is a unidimensional concept or a multidimensional concept? Most of you will say it is multidimensional. Because if you remember, when we were discussing about poverty, we discussed its social implication, we discussed its political implication and economic implication as well. And while discussion of all these implications was being done, we saw one common thing, that poverty in itself is a multidimensional open concept. Not a very closed, not a very limited one. Now, similarly, if the nature of the poverty is multidimensional, we need to measure poverty also in a multidimensional way, which is why Niti Aayog in our country, very recently, a few years back, comes up with the Niti Aayog's multidimensional poverty index, national multidimensional poverty index. And definitely, it is inspired from the UNDP and UPSC's global multidimensional poverty index. Now, this national multidimensional poverty index, which is by the Niti Aayog, it is using around 12 indicators. The global multidimensional indicators, the global multidimensional index, it uses 10 indicators. National multidimensional index, it is using 12 indicators. Now, these 12 indicators are divided into three. One is health, one is education, and another is standard of living. So, amongst all these things, poverty is manifested, it is calculated on the basis of healthcare, on the basis of education, and on the basis of standard of living of an individual. It is measured that the person can be considered as a multidimensional poor person or not. Now, since we have discussed about India's position in extreme poverty, let us now jump to Kerala. Now, according to this Niti Aayog's 2021 Multidimensional Poverty Index, Kerala poverty rate was around 0.7%, which is lowest ever in India. And poverty declined from 59.8% in the 1970s to near zero due to successive governments' welfare policies in education, healthcare, and social security. So, education, healthcare, social security, special welfare policies by the governments on these three sectors is one of the reasons that why Kerala has done so well and why other states should be looking forward to Kerala. And as the program is touted as Extreme Poverty Eradication Program, the name itself resonates with the public a lot. Now, let us very briefly understand about this Extreme Poverty Eradication Program so that we'll be able to get a lesson that how Kerala is able to do or conduct such type of programs and what can we learn as a nation and as a country. Now, this program was launched in the year 2021 and the local self-government department was made the nodal agency for this program. Now, around 4 lakh personals, either officials or elected representatives or volunteers were trained for this particular program. Okay, so once the personals were trained, now it is time for the identification process that you need to identify which people are actually who are coming under the extreme poverty and who are actually requiring the benefits from the government. So after all the identification procedures scientifically what is done and after all the verifications and migration checks, around 59,000 families are confirmed that these 59,000 families are the ones who require a certain type of intervention. And what is the criteria which is used? Your income, your health, your housing, your food security, all these things are taken into account in order to identify a family which is extremely poor or not. Okay, so once identification is done, now the next step is that how key interventions are done by the government. Now, key interventions can be in the form of housing, can be in the form of food security, can be in the form of essential documents and services being provided. Now, if we talk about the key interventions one by one, first is housing. Now, around 4,677 homeless families were identified in Kerala based on this program, and around 4,005 of them were provided homes under Life Mission scheme, which means there were around 4,000 people or 4,000 families were provided home under this particular scheme. And not just this, the second intervention was in relation to food security, and around 20,648 families, which means 20,000 and a half families, they were lacking stable food access and they were given meals by the local bodies under this particular poverty eradication program. Also, not just this, intervention was also done to provide key documents to the people as well, which is why under Avakasam Ati Vegam, that is Rights Fast campaign, families were also ensured that they were provided with these documents like Aadhaar, like voter ID, like bank accounts, like MG Narega, job cards, like social pensions or electricity or LPG connections, whatever permissions or whatever permits or whatever documents, key documents and services which are required by the public to have from the government. Those services or those documents, again, government will make the effort, will prepare for you and will provide all of you at once. All of these things to you at once. Now, great thing is that in doing all these things, opposition parties of Kerala also supported the incumbent government and a bipartisan support for implementation was given. Now, if that is the case, then whole state is working on a mission mode to ensure that at least one positive thing we are able to achieve, that is we end extreme poverty to greatest extent possible and completely we are able to end extreme poverty. Now, since Kerala has become the first state to eradicate extreme poverty, it is time which is ripe enough for the other states also to follow the lead, especially the northern states of our country. Now, recently elections in Bihar are coming. After that, a lot of other northern states and central Indian states would be having elections. In order to ensure that poverty is eradicated, development is ensured, what we need to do is localized planning, which is driven by data, and micro-level targeting and welfare convergence. All these things are to be done simultaneously in order to ensure that extreme poverty is eradicated in all the matters whatsoever. So this particular feat by Kerala is not normal, and it reinstates the legacy of Kerala in human development, whether it be in education, whether it be in social justice, and now in eradication of poverty. Kerala is a benchmark which the world should foresee and which the world and India should definitely promote, should celebrate and learn from. Until unless we prepare Kerala as a case study, as a role model for the other states in the country, it would not be of any macro use. Which is why, on a mission mode, what we need to ensure is, like Kerala, all the states in the country, they take separate prominent initiatives. Of course, with the help of the central government, they should take separate initiatives like this extreme poverty eradication program. We need to ensure that poverty eradication in India can be done very easily, and in the next few decades we will be able to eradicate extreme poverty in India also, and we'll be able to become a developed economy by the year 2047. I hope you gained a lot of insights from this particular session. Do let me know what are your views surrounding this extreme poverty. All the very best. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.